Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, back again with attorney Stephen Jessup, and we have the opportunity to discuss one of our recently resolved cases against MetLife. And this is an ERISA exempt case, which is obviously more cases are ERISA governed just because that's the way these policies are written, being group provided policies. But in these videos, we like to talk about what we were able to do for this client, what the facts and circumstances were that led to the denial, and how the matter was resolved subsequently in favor of the claimant. So let's talk about the background of this case.
Yeah, so my client, he's an elementary school teacher here in Broward County in Florida, and being a government employee, that is why his policy would be exempted from ERISA. However, for the nuts and bolts operation of how MetLife is going to administer the policy and go through its motions, it's pretty much the same. Like a lot of people who have scheduled surgery, and his disability is based on low back pain, he was scheduled for an L4 to S1 laminectomy and fusion surgery. So prior to the actual surgery, he contacted MetLife for short-term disability, advised him, I'm going to be having surgery, I'll be out these dates. And that's not uncommon if you have a surgery date coming up. The surgery occurred, the healing process was not as expected. Ultimately ended up with a diagnosis of post-laminectomy syndrome. He was continuing to get radiating pain, numbness, and tingling down into his legs. So where MetLife approved the short-term disability, and as you know, and we've discussed before, they kind of do this idea of reasonable period of recovery following the surgery, X amount of time they expect you to be out. Well, that time, was longer than the short-term disability period, so it did transition into long-term disability. But within 2 months on long-term disability, there was constant requests for information, medical reviews going on, increases in forms, because they're saying, when are you going back to work, when are you going back to work type of thing. And eventually culminated them in basically, having an internal doctor look at it and say, there's no evidence that I see that would support any restrictions and limitations whatsoever.
And what a lot of people need to realize about MetLife is they're a monster in terms of the world of disability. They're one of the top 5 biggest disability carriers in terms of policy. So the claim reps who handle, and they have a lot of turnover there, have a computer system that basically calendar stuff. And then they have this book, this return to work guidelines book or manual that they rely upon. And it said laminectomy surgery, 3 to 4 months recovery time. Let me put it in here, calendar. This person should be back to work by this day, regardless of what their medical records say. And that's why when you said, client had the surgery, then they started firing up, we need this, we need that, because it's all part of their protocol of the way their computer system makes their claims handlers operate. So you got to that point where this claimant eventually got a letter because they had their in-house doctor, or I don't know if they used a third-party doctor.
Initially, it was like the nurse case manager.
Oh, okay,
and,
so even worse.
And then they got an independent physician consultant who his name is not unfamiliar to disability denial.
So and what's really sad, and to us it's norm, we see it all the time, is, oh, you had the surgery, you should be better, kind of thing, and oh, we don't see the objective evidence of your condition anymore because you had the surgery. How could you still have that? Which is a big fallacy, because a lot of times people have the surgery in hopes of trying to alleviate the pain. Every surgeon will go, no surgeon will guarantee we're going to alleviate your symptoms. They will say that if you're in danger of paralysis, I will guarantee you pretty much that you're not going to become paralyzed, because whatever danger is there that could possibly impinge upon your spinal cord, I will remove that to take that away, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people end up going into surgery. But nerve damage is permanent. The radiating pain, the other things that a claimant can have, can unfortunately still be there. And that sounds like what was going on in this case. So what steps did you have to take once you got the denial?
So, first and foremost, get in the claim file. Want to see what they have from review, medical reviews, what those medical reviews are saying. Vocationally speaking, I don't think we're any disagreement of his job duties as an elementary school teacher. One thing that I also took into it when looking at the physical impact is this client is a large human being. He's like north of 6'5". 250 or so pounds. He's a big person. So, even he said with respect to the surgery and everything, leverage points aren't necessarily as good. So it's impacting him more. He carries more weight. And MetLife was trying to say that, oh, this is more of an issue. Your surgery is fine. Like you said, structurally everything looks good. There's no reason why you can't go back to work. So they're not looking at the whole of all the other medical issues that are happening. And one of the other big concerns we have is, with MetLife, they write these neuromuscular, musculoskeletal, soft tissue disorder limitations, which this policy has. So not only are we facing a denial where we have to prove he can't do his own job, we want to set it up to also argue that at the 24-month mark, he's not going to be able to perform any occupation. But the third one is that 24-month limitation. We needed to establish, because he hadn't had it done through EMGs and nerve conduction studies, the evidence of the radiculopathy. Otherwise, I've had it happen before when that doesn't show up. MetLife is essentially saying, yeah, we understand you have these problems. We only have to pay 24 months. Sorry, your claim is done. So it's trying to work around these three factors. One of the first things we did, though, is really get him in for functional capacity evaluation to really try to document from this idea of the Department of Labor standards what his physical capabilities were for work. MetLife was targeting, as a school teacher, light duty. The testing did come back that he had no safe work capacity, which is below like what an idea of a sedentary is that from a standpoint of how he moved throughout the testing, was doing things, it would be unsafe for him to be in a work environment. That was the biggest. And then he had very supportive doctors. Even the surgeon, in which sometimes we find that surgeons aren't because sometimes hey, we did the surgery, everything was fine. This surgeon was, because going into it, and this surgeon was good, even looking at the records prior to the surgery, very honest about where the issues could lie, because the client's weight and BMI and how it can affect the healing from the fusion and all these other things. So the doctor was wonderful in his support and using the FCE to bolster his opinions, and really, attacking the IPC doctor, the independent peer review doctor. And in this situation too, in the denial letter, it's like, oh, our doctor attempted to call your doctor, you didn't hear from him, so we're just going to go with our doctor's opinion, essentially. So a completely one-sided opinion, and I always find it a little skeptical when you see a doctor say, especially after a major surgery, that this person has absolutely nothing wrong with them. Like nothing whatsoever, is perfectly fine to go back. And so we had a lot of things to be able to argue and show, just, demonstrate, physically speaking, he wasn't going to be able to get back.
And the other thing is, an elementary school teacher is a very demanding job.
It is.
It's based, I have elementary school kids. And anyone who's watching this video has kids, there's a big degree of babysitting. You have 18 to 25 kids in a classroom, and you're there for 6 to 7 periods a day. You don't have the opportunity to say to the kids, hold on, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go take a break, I'm going to go lay down for 15 minutes. No, you got to be dialed in, attentive, or chaos breaks out.
Moving around, walking, bending, it's a lot more physically demanding than I think MetLife would give it credit for. But you're right, I have a toddler, my wife's a former school teacher, so it's a lot, so.
And after you submitted the appeal, what was the time frame to get a decision?
Almost on the 45th day. Almost on the 45th day that they came back with a decision to approve.
And so this was denied at how many months into the long-term disability claim?
He was only about 4 months into the long-term disability claim.
And you mentioned, because you're always anticipating for claimants, we don't know how long they're going to be on claim, but most of our clients stay on for extended periods of times, years, because they can't get back to doing what they're doing. They learn how to manage and live their lives, but they can't go back to these 40-hour work weeks. And you talked about this neuromuscular skeletal limitation, which is most commonly found in MetLife's disability policies. And with that, you needed to prove some kind of radiculopathy. So were you able to still do that post-surgery?
Yeah.
And how did you go about doing that?
He went in, I told him, listen, you really need to get EMG and nerve conduction studies done just to verify, because his records had tons of information about the numbness and the tingling.
Right.
The clinical examination was, supportive for it, but I know that MetLife isn't going to take his doctor, albeit his doctor is a specialist, opinion that the clinical exam would show it. We really wanted that objective medical evidence to support it, and that's really only found through EMG and nerve conduction studies. Not applicable to his policy, because that was an exception to get around that 24-month. I think it's important with anyone with a MetLife policy that may have this. I recently reviewed a MetLife policy where the evidence of radiculopathy was gone. They didn't. That was removed as language that would get you around that 24-month, neuromusculoskeletal limitation. So even with positive EMGs, it's no longer an exception to that. So if you're watching this, you have a MetLife policy, I think it's very important to know exactly how that provision may read. And some people don't necessarily know that it's going to be applied to their claim. Nothing correspondence he had, it was just my experience in knowing and seeing it and then telling him about it in the policy.
Well,
most people don't find out till their claim's getting denied.
Well, it's going to come because you're only 4 months into the claim, so you had another...
We had time to set him up for long-term success. Ideally, if he's able to return to work, he'll return to work. Everything's working against him. He's closer to retirement age, so it's probably less likely that he's going to. Social Security is all pending. They made him apply for everything with regards to that. So there's still a lot of opportunity, as we know, for MetLife to review and deny and do what they want to do.
Right, and I know you'll continue to manage his claim moving forward because, first of all, he still has to get past that change of definition. Although a teacher could be considered sedentary to light duty, give or take.
It's going to be a matter, and I think when we get closer, look at where his medical's at and vocational reviews. What type of transferable skills would he have? He's been a teacher for so long. It's in my opinion, from a standpoint of that, he may not have skills to transfer to really any other type of work.
So obviously you're anticipating that, and I know you're continuing to help with the claim forms, the attending physician statements, the client interviews, claimant interviews, which MetLife wants to do, and guiding him with what he needs to be telling his doctors and how often he needs to go. These are all, people need to realize it doesn't end when you win your appeal, because now you got to do is you got to, what we say, protect your benefits moving forward so that MetLife has a more challenging time to deny your claim. So the best offense is a strong defense, and that really applies in these long-term disability claims. So congratulations on the claim. I'm sure the client is happy now that he's getting paid, and I know we'll continue to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't stop until he's ready to go back to work, if he is. If you're someone out there who has a MetLife long-term disability claim, no matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you. Feel free to reach out to Stephen, myself, any of our long-term disability lawyers, and we'll always provide you with an initial free phone consultation. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process, and when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search, plus we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.